Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. Duane the Great Writer and Seer.
In this real side experience, I would find myself in my former UK physical level house recreated. On the real side, our recreated homes represent the consciousness that from the first moment the real awareness selected a simulator, uploaded in essence the ideas that affect it, just as we would upload a computer game to our computers as files. The ideas are stored in a consciousness which then affect body forms which have the facilities to decode these ideas into the multi-dimensional simulator we then can experience. And additionally, as the secondary free will personal self is established, will all the ideas as created through the body vehicle mechanics, or ideas as created by others we agree with, these then are still further ideas incorporated as the consciousness, along with those that are the simulator overall stadium we are operating within, and all of this, all the ideas of consciousness, represent then our restrictions, that until we begin a process of effacing and releasing all the ideas the consciousness comprises of, we remain the effects of its entirety. Our homes, as representing the consciousness on the real side, will symbolically then contain all our idea agreements and attachments, and many an experience have I shared, whereas this effacing and releasing of the consciousness of ideas progresses. This is revealed by a removing of house clutter, a reorganizing and restructuring of our houses, that not only are these ideas effaced, released, and this represented by removal of a clutter and so forth, but as we continue to align the personal intent with the real intent of his recognition, this can be revealed as our recreated houses receiving refurbishments, restructuring, or a complete overhaul, to the extent of the walls even being smashed down, the ceilings and roof removed, etc. In this case, I would be exacting some alteration or other to the house's interior, suggesting and aligning with the personal self-consciousness that would be more conducive to the awareness process. For indeed, with the alterations complete to my satisfaction, so I would vacate the consciousness representing house, and in the street that contains the house as it is on the physical level, so Duane would be waiting for me in one of the vehicles he utilizes in physical level Mexico. Present within the vehicle also would be my father, though impressions suggested this was a real guide assuming this form, as is very often the case in real side experiences, where the guides have a tendency to operate as the body forms of older siblings or parental figures. The design of the consciousness will dictate the extent of our limitation in regards to a creational positioning. Indeed, every idea represents restriction in and of itself if clung to and agreed with, and the greater volume of idea restrictions we are in agreement with, the greater will be our limitation accordingly. That as we begin to release the agreements of the consciousness, potentially we then will afford ourselves more options, more opportunities, as we are severing the tap lines that hold us in a limitation. It's all very well desiring to want to be extricated from certain creational circumstances, but if we are retaining agreement to ideas that are holding us to the position we are in, the bulk of the agreements we will be unconscious of, those that are of the subconscious, then despite our conscious yearning for alternative positioning, the agreements we are not aware of will be preventing our ability to improve our creational situations. For until we begin the process of effacing and releasing all ideas of the consciousness, we will be in full agreement with the entirety of its construct, and subjected then to whatever effects it comprises of. And as I said, as we continue to go through lifetimes and build the consciousness of restriction, so we are progressively limiting ourselves in reflective accordance. For indeed, in this case, Duane and the guides were in actuality set to remove new friends from the earth and relocate them elsewhere, to a position probably more conducive for the awareness process, for impressions suggested that this experience was a future view potentiality of a kind, in where the possibility of the earth becoming an unsuitable position was so, for whatever undisclosed reason, at least at this stage of the experience this might be, and necessary was it to reposition the new friends off a planet. This would reveal as to the exact nature of my consciousness restructuring just moments prior, for as I said, as we release the agreements, so we afford ourselves more options. One of the options being a planetary evacuation, which required then additional consciousness alterations to facilitate this option. For everything we experience is based on our agreement, and as I said, we may desire relocation if conditions on Earth become unworkable, but if we hold to idea agreements which prevent this from being so, we will not be affecting for ourselves the experience where we can be extracted from the earth. For indeed, impressions revealed that the car we were in, with Duane at the wheel, represented the idea of a planetary relocation, and that this idea was conceived, created by him. For the vehicles on the real side tend represent ideas, with the drivers being the ones having conceived the idea that the vehicle represents. The passengers then, in agreement with the idea, and for visual emphasis, so the vehicle would sprout wings, transforming that it now had the ability to operate in the harsh environment of space, and we would take to the skies, preparing to leave the planet and be repositioned elsewhere. As I said, impressions suggesting this was an option being lined up for the new friends, if such became necessary, if the dark forces managed to successfully have one of their many dastardly idea agreements they have installed in human overall consciousness come to pass, if one of their depopulation, catastrophic, apocalyptic style ideas was maintained long enough at the forefront of any other agreement that it becomes physical level manifest. Every idea agreement in a consciousness is a present now in actuality, but through the consciousness design, so these ideas process through in a gradual sequence of time frames, and only the ideas held in prominence are those that are being processed through to their culmination point on the physical level, and only will reach the point of actualization if maintained as the forerunning agreement long enough for they to become physical level manifest. And necessary was it for the prerequisite aligning of the consciousness, the detaching and severing of certain agreements that, were they not released, would effect as experience, where we would deny ourselves such an option of being planetary relocated. Interestingly, I would elect to reset this entire scene, as though affording myself the view of what I may experience with what was set to transpire on Earth, should one not have released the necessary agreements which would facilitate the means by which extraction from Earth would be made available. For on the real side, we are not resigned to the effects of our choices. We can reinsert ourselves at the starting point and choose differently. For all ideas that effect as the simulated situations they will throughout multi-dimensional creation, all are present in their entirety in the nowness of the real awareness isness reality, and only from the personal self-perspective of linear time-frame idea sequencing are the choices we had previously made now resigned to the past and beyond our ability to alter. The real awareness can place the simulated forms at any point in any timeline in a creation, and from the personal self-consideration, it would seem we have then the ability to time travel, to alter the past as we see fit, to effect alternative outcomes, etc. And so the scene would be restarted. I would once again be in my consciousness representing house. I wouldn't exact the consciousness alterations necessary, and as I vacated the house, the impressions were that many years of so-called time had elapsed, and I would be in the midst of one of the more dastardly innumerable potentialities that may befall humanity, should the agreement pertaining to it be maintained in its prominence over all others, and long enough to be physical level realized. For indeed, I would find Duane's vehicle, the exact one he had utilized in the scene prior to the resetting of it, which had become as a spacecraft and afforded myself evacuation from the Earth. Only now there was no sign of Duane or the guide in my father's form, and indeed the vehicle itself was as though in a state of decay. Many years had elapsed, as I said. Symbolically, the idea had been abandoned and become unfunctional. The agreements not severed which had allowed the actualizing of the idea that the vehicle represented, that of a planetary evacuation, to be so for myself. I would find a selection of old newspapers scattered about the ground, revealing that a tremendous cataclysm had indeed beset the earth. Impressions revealing that of the human population drastically diminished, and the survivors now shared their world with the two distinct, unearthly species. The cataclysm, whatever it may have been, as no details were provided, had been a dark force instigated through agreements in human consciousness that had allowed such to be, and in the aftermath it seems the dark forces had withdrawn, perhaps only momentarily, but in their absence had two other alien species attempted to take possession of the planet. The species were not dark force affiliated, they had simply taken advantage of the situation. The Earth was apparently rather a sought-after planet due to its creational positioning, and very likely if the dark force reptilians did return, there would be rather a further complication that these two species now presented as. Both the species were technologically orientated and were rather opposed to each other, battling over their respective claims to the Earth. Of the human survivors, neither of the two species could care less as to their plight, or had any inclination to want to eradicate the humans that remained. A map would as though manifest before me and reveal where the battle lines were being drawn, where each species were establishing themselves globally, and one of the species seemed to be identified curiously as the past life-timers, and the other by a similar expression, that of a phrase referencing past lifetimes, but of which I failed to recollect on awaking. Of the two species, only one would be visually revealed to me, as I would be present now in an area of the Earth, though no details were provided as to my exact location, and accompanied by another human, impressions revealing nothing in regards to him, and we would find ourselves entering into the midst of one of the two Earth-conquering species. As it transpired, they were two-legged, walking cat people, a body form that is rather prevalent in creation, although there are many variations and expressions. Generally, the cat people are of a benign countenance, their consciousness of a design where they have little inclination in regards to domination, subjugation, etc. But most of the feline species are technological. Vast numbers of them are stepping up and choosing to become more aware at this moment, and assisting with the various galactic projects of a life and awareness beneficial nature, as I have been documenting over the years. There was a real side experience I shared many years ago, which revealed the humanity overall experience potentiality, that as the dark forces instigated a global cataclysmic event and would withdraw from the Earth, So a military-orientated species of bipedal felines would take possession of the Earth, and although they would then represent the new Earth and human survivor controllers, they were less harsh and destructive than the reptilians they had replaced. This real-side potentiality future view then would reveal this still as a possibility, for as I said, every agreement ever human consciousness installed will be retained, and that the agreement pertaining to a feline species, again invading the Earth, had jostled to the forefront of human consciousness seemingly, but with the variations as I outlined. That in this case, the cat species would rather be squabbling over the claiming of the Earth with another undisclosed species, or perhaps, in the previous view from years ago, the cats had managed to oust or vanquish the other species, and then take singular control of the Earth and what remained of humanity, and I was never shown the conflict between the cats and whatever the other species was, that I only had perhaps revealed the moment of the cat's triumphant dominion over the Earth. Either way, the situation in this current real-side experience was that of the cats locked into a conflict with whatever the other species happened to be, and my companion and myself would witness the felines in the location of the Earth we were in, building mighty statues that depicted either prominent felines of their species, or maybe even their version of religious gods. We would be greeted by them amiably enough, that despite my companion being human and my operating in my usual human form also, we were met with no hostility. As I said, these particular felines had no animosity towards humans. They were simply claiming the Earth, and maybe at a later moment, if they rid themselves and the planet of the other invading species, they would establish themselves as the new controllers, just as was revealed in the experience I was shown years ago. But a shared experience between the cats and human survivors that could deteriorate again into a further chaos if the reptilian dark forces returned from their absence and wanted the Earth back in their keeping. This was then the reason for the option for new friend evacuation, that they could avoid being caught up in the mayhem of the orchestrated catastrophes and cataclysms that will rack the Earth if this particular human overall experience comes to pass. A human overall experience scenario that is dependent on the idea that affects it being retained as the forerunning human agreement and maintained as such long enough for it to be physical level manifested, as I said. I would like to assume I then would reset the scene again and ensure my consciousness restructuring would facilitate effect my being able to be relocated from the planet with the other new friends if such an event or others of a similar nature come to pass. For as I said, I was to be shown this potentiality, but afforded the view in this manner, that of experiencing it through my momentarily limiting myself to this situation as shared by all humans, resigned to it also through their consciousness of overwhelmingly dark force installed restrictions held to. And as this is the most recent future view, so-called, in regards to humanity, this indicates the agreement effecting what I have revealed here, is among those at the forefront of human consciousness agreement, along with others of a more beneficial persuasion, such as the alien armada, etc., and what comes to pass as overall human experience will be for humanity ultimately to decide.
It sounds like the cat creatures are real estate brokers. Okay, so they want the real estate on the land. So that's going to be very, very interesting. And it's good that you showed all sides of this. Yes, that is the focus. So we have another plan going in case the knuckleheads that are controlling the planet do silly things. So we want to be ready to go. And so very, very real. And so this is the next big adventure. This will be very, very interesting. So yeah, and it's a split-second decision. And I'm sure there will be a lot of people that will want to go too, a lot of unaware people, but that won't be possible. Only those that are being prepared realistically will go on this big adventure, etc. So the planet Earth is going to continue to do what it does because this is the hot spot, etc. So we'll see. And here in Mexico, since we've been here the last couple of years, we're really bombarded with chemtrails, etc., where it wasn't that way before. And they know we're here, they're amping things up, etc. They don't like what we're doing, just sharing something real. But then again, what we're sharing, it's a big journey. It's a big challenge to take the next step to recognize something more real than all that has taken place. So again, yeah, we're putting this out there. This is a good one, Kevin, that people have this opportunity, but of course, most of them are going to accept it, not accept it, or not believe it, etc. And I understand. So it's going to be one of those things, just like in the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. And when the individual in the saucer, played by Michael Rennie, was standing on the saucer ready to leave, he hesitated for a moment and looked at the crowd, look at the scene. It's very good. And he looked at the lady that he had come to know. And they all hesitated. They just stood there. And so he just said, okay, adios. And that's how it is. That's just how very, very real it is. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. There is a movie with Nicolas Cage called Knowing. And at the very end scene, you can go on YouTube and see the end scene where the two children were received by those with the saucer, with the spaceships, etc., but wouldn't let the adult go, which was Nicolas Cage, and everybody else just wanted the two children. And they were taken to another planet like many children. It's really a good scene. It's about 4 or 5 minutes long. The last scene of Knowing with Nicolas Cage. It's really cool where they're standing there. He leaves his dad, gets on the spaceship, and then all of a sudden they're on the other planet running through the grass to the big tree, and you see all the other spaceships in the sky too.